Mark here from Mark 2.0. Brian and I are just thrilled for our next guest, producer, writer, photographer, director, Bill Howard. Bill, let's start out by how you started getting into this career.
A little over 7 years ago, I went photography full time. I had a 20-year previous life in automotive service management, and I was also an outdoors columnist for up to 16 different newspapers. I did the column each week, and I also did some freelance writing back then. And I decided to get a DSLR to help with my columns and my freelance stuff, because you get paid for the photography side of it as well. And it was kind of funny because 6 weeks after my first paid gig with the camera, I was able to quit and go full time.
Awesome.
But every year I try to learn something new. Like, I'm a sports photographer, I'm a commercial photographer, a real estate photographer. So like, I would focus on portraits one year. Well, a few years ago, I decided to start working on the video side of things, and did my first little kind of like an experimental short film. And I filmed it over like 4 hours one evening. It made it to 2 film festivals. It was featured in one. It was the lead off project in another. And then I just gradually tried to learn more on the filmmaking side. And then last Halloween weekend, I shot my first short film that had cast and crew. Something that it wasn't just a one-man band. We had an ensemble of probably about 15, 20 people, and I enjoyed it, but I wanted to have, being a writer, I kind of wanted to maybe do something that's my own story. So I learned how to write a script the proper way. And then that went into my first feature film, which is called The Great Dismal. And the script made it to the Toronto Film and Script Awards. And we started filming last February, of this year.
Yeah.
And I have 5 scenes left that I have to shoot, but I have to wait for the leaves to like go away and change color and not be so summery and vibrant green.
Yeah.
So that was my first feature film. I've got those 5 scenes left to do. In the meantime, I've, off of something that had happened in my photography side, I decided to do like a short, it's a feature-length documentary, but to do something it didn't take long to film, in other words. And that was The Incredulous Case of Aliens, the U.S. Government, and Arnie Smith. And I did,
which was great, by the way, everybody. It was riveting. Oh gosh, I watched it like I couldn't take my eyes off the guy. They were just so amazing.
Well, I greatly appreciate it. But that was really just more of a test for me, so that I could test the distribution system with things like Indie Rights or Film Hub for The Great Dismal, so I could do The Great Dismal right when I finished it. But I had a lot of response while making that film, as well as once the film came out. And so now I'm doing a docuseries called Encounters, and it's basically dealing with alien abductions. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell so far.
So the attention you were getting during it was because of the subject matter, you figured, mostly?
Yes. It was, I had several people that came out and they wanted to tell me their story. They would message me their story, but they are scared to tell other people. The only reason they came to me is because of the film. And the more this happened, the more I realized there's a lot of people that have either had abductions or think they have had abductions. And I guess that's one avenue that I'm trying to figure out with the docuseries on Encounters is, man, some of this stuff is just so unbelievable. It's just unbelievable, right? And now that the government's come out and talked about, yes, we have these aerial phenomena that are not man-made, they're otherworldly. Those are the words the government is using describing them. I'm hoping it's going to take some of the stigma off of the abduction side as well.
The abduction thing is weird because in my research, you get the same story from people in the Amazon jungle as you do in New York City. And so it's really hard to deny, even though, like you said, it's just so crazy. It's so hard to believe. If they're telling kind of the same story, well, there's got to be some kind of continuity, some kind of truth going on there. And there's just a lot of information, and some of it seems very kind of benign, and some of it seems very dangerous.
In today's age, it's a whole lot easier to see how people can make stuff up and still have the same story from Japan to Argentina to New York. But a lot of these stories that, this stuff started way back in the 40s and 50s with evidence or at least secondhand evidence that were very similar. And this, the only way you would see it then was if it was in a newspaper. I mean, you only had 3 news stations, and ABC, NBC, and CBS, they didn't broadcast in Japan. They didn't broadcast in Argentina.
And of course, there was that even a little further back, you can go all the way to the Roswell incident, which was a good example of how the media can literally control everything.
Oh yeah, and then who controls the media as well?
Right.
I mean, there's so much depth in everything in these stories. I mean, you don't talk about an alien abduction without having the government mentioned in the same breath, at least in the interviews that I've had so far.
It's so easy to manipulate the newspapers. They literally put out the story that a flying saucer had been recovered, and they had it in their possession rather. And a couple of days later, it turns out to be a weather balloon of tin foil and basically, popsicle sticks, basically. So it's really scary what the media can do and how long they've been able to do it. And then you go to the 1950s and you see a lot of black and white film of people talking about abduction. And to me, that was really the first glimpse that we got of that.
Yeah. And, going back to Roswell, I spoke with a gentleman, I want to say it was about 2 months ago, and he lived in Dayton, Ohio. So he was right there near Wright-Patterson, and he had top secret clearance. He graduated high school and went to work for Wright-Patterson, at Wright-Patterson as what's the word I'm trying to think of? He wasn't in the military. He's a contractor. So, but he got to see like the manifold list, and he saw when the planes came in, and he said, a weather balloon just doesn't weigh 20,000 pounds. There was something else.
That is riveting. Wow. I've never heard of this person.
Yeah. And the thing is, I can't say his name. I'm a lot of this stuff, they're scared to come out with too much. But I mean, what I can vet of him, at least in a short time, yeah, that's where he was born. That's where he went to high school. And yes, he was a contractor. There's no reason for me to doubt his word on it.
That's awesome. Yeah. That definitely.
When, again, you see a manifold list from a plane that's coming in, and it's from, like 2 days after Roswell. It lands at Wright-Patterson. The story meshes. Let's the best way to say it, I guess.
Do you think the government probably started their campaign with the media, movies and TV, trying to kind of diffuse this thing? It took about 20 years, but in the late 70s, they started to kind of, I think, push the idea forward that these aliens are our friends and that they're kind of watching over us and stuff like that. Some people take that attitude toward aliens, but your documentary kind of shows a different view. What is your view on that?
I don't know if we had another species, an alien species or something like that was there to help us. If I'm trying to help somebody myself, I don't mind that person knowing I'm helping them. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
if you find a wounded deer and you're trying to like get it out of the road, you're not trying to hide from the deer. You know, it's
Yeah.
I just can't imagine that. I'm not going to say that there's, something sinister and evil with an alien species. Heck, I mean, honestly, I don't know if there is an alien species. I haven't seen it myself. Have I seen a UFO? I've seen something I couldn't identify, but I haven't seen the classic flying saucer or the vibrating bell or the cigar shaped type stuff flying in the sky. I haven't seen that. But to me, it would be more of we're of use to whatever's out there rather than they're trying to help us or they're trying to kill us. There's just something of, and I mentioned it in the movie. When I was out on the salt flats in Utah, and I had a little monologue in the Incredulous movie. The Earth is very, very unique. I mean, we've got liquid water. We have north and south. We have the frozen poles. So we've got high temperatures. We've got like the volcanoes, and we have what 8 billion species of different creatures that are living here, maybe more, 80 billion, something like that. Once you start counting viruses and bacteria and stuff like that, we haven't found anything on the only 2 places that we could go to actually check, and that's Mars and on the moon. At least we haven't been told that there's any living entity on either one. I'm not saying intelligent. I'm just saying living, period. And that makes the Earth kind of like a giant petri dish. So if I were an alien species, why wouldn't I want to come here and see what's special about this planet? And that's kind of the thing there. So yeah, again, I think we would be more of a test for them and to study rather than being something they're trying to, let's keep nuclear bombs away because this species is special. I don't think they care about something like that if there actually is an alien species out there.
What
or
do you
multiple.
think about
As my interviews
yeah.
have gone, we're talking multiples. So
Yeah, I was going to say, first of all, you get the your classic grays, and they seem to be reported as kind of emotionless, and then kind of just leading you around. They'll pretty much put you to sleep and put you back in your bed or whatever.
right.
And then I've heard things of like the reptilians, who according to lore, they see us mostly as food or whatever. And then there are ones that are like look like just like beautiful human beings, with blonde
Right.
hair, and they're very, very interested in us and want to help us and all of that. And do you believe any of these other things? Have you run into any of these things in the people you've talked to?
One gentleman I spoke with, he counted 6 different species. And I mentioned reptilian in our interview several times, and he kept correcting me that it's not reptilian, it's serpent.
Oh,
Wow.
He also has mentioned many times about a fish species. The look that he described it as isn't like a fish that we pull out of the ocean or out of the river, but it does have fish-like qualities. It has scales, the way the face is made, but the way he explains it is less material and more dimensional look to it. He also mentioned that there was either insectoid or like a bee species that was actually in his room. He said the face is solid, it's material, but the body was very digital, almost glitchy and matrix like.
wow.
And again, so you're sitting here as trying to be a sane person, and you don't want to laugh, you don't want to think they're crazy, and you're just trying to put there's so much of this that if you haven't experienced it, it's hard to fathom what they're telling you and then believe that it's actually happening. And when we just talked the other night briefly, I mentioned that sometimes you wonder if we know, even with the recent stuff, I don't care which political party you're with, whether you're Democrat or Republican, it does not matter. but we know that the government will eat its own, and they'll manipulate things. We know that.
No doubt.
If I were to experience something, and it's something that I was not supposed to experience, it would be so easy for the government or the clandestine groups that's in the government, whatever, to at that point say, we're not going to be able to shut him up. So let's just keep feeding him stuff that's even more and more fanciful. That way, everybody will just kind of shun him and, brush him off. It's so easy to do it. One of the things I mentioned is it's like if you have, a couple, a man and a woman, and the man gets caught cheating. Every time his phone rings from there on out, and a woman's name is showing up on screen, the woman is going to think that that's somebody he's cheating with. Yeah. It's not necessarily that's what's happening, but once you are fed that first line, it stays with you. And that's the same thing with this alien abduction, UFOs. Once you experience it the first time, it's so easy to then think everything is involved, as far as the government covering up, as far as aliens are watching you at all times and that type of thing. So that's one of the things we're trying to get in encounters is separate that information, and let's try to get what we can. Let's see if that is what's going on, or we Bob Lazar mentioned it, that I could have been going by rooms that they were planning stuff in there to make me think it was a whole lot different than what it was, so that my story just wouldn't collaborate. And I mean, that makes sense. That's the perfect way to hide something.
And you talked to Bob Lazar today, and he basically has the exact same speeches back then. It's basically, I saw these things, but I really don't know.
Yeah.
Everything's so compartmentalized too. No one can really even get verification from their peers or anything like that. Have you had any weird contact or anything that you felt was trying to throw you off, or anyone contact you or anything like that?
The person that I first interviewed, and I talk about him at the beginning of Incredulous Case.
The one who died?
Yeah, the one who died. He worked in a nuclear program, and then through a friend of his that was an astronaut, he was able to transfer as an operative. And what he was telling me, I guess that's part of the weird thing. He asked me if I had my phone on him. I told him yes. He told me to cut it off. So I did. I thought that was the end of it. But then he made me lay it in the grass, and we walked 75 yards into a cornfield. Corn stalks are 7-8 feet high, and he's stretching up and looking around like this the whole time. And I mean, you couldn't see 4 feet away from you because of the corn stalks, but he was very skittish. And then that's when he started telling me, what his job was. And for those that haven't seen the movie, I do have it on YouTube, and it's also on cubestream.com right now. And it's going to go to a few other streaming services in the near future as well. But I don't even know where I want to go with this, to be honest with you.
I know. I don't want you to go too far. I mean, exactly. I know the story. You told it to me. I'm just dying here because I know.
So I kind of got to be careful with it, but it's his job as an operative was when somebody went missing in one part of the United States, that he would find out who it was that was missing. And if it was somebody that they knew was supposed to be missing, then they would come up with the reason for that person dying.
That in itself is fascinating, is it not?
Exactly. Exactly. And I mean, and he explained it out. He said, look, and my job became much more easy when Mexico cartel, drug cartels started coming over, because then we could blame it on them, and everybody was like, yeah, that's probably what happened.
Oh my goodness.
Before then they were coming up, he must have died from a rattlesnake bite, or, from exposure to the elements in the desert, that type of stuff.
And it was that Four Corner area, was it not?
That Four Corners area. That's correct. And he said, now, if the name did not show up on his list, then the CIA doesn't look for missing people. They don't. So he would turn it over to the SBI. the State Bureau of Investigation of whichever state it was in, and let them handle it, which is what they're supposed to do. Maybe the FBI gets involved at a certain extent, but the CIA doesn't look for missing people. But as a CIA operative, he was the first step, and then he would disperse it to either give a reason or to disperse it to whatever agency that needed to go to. If it was a real person not a real person, if it was a person that really went missing that could not be accounted for.
I wonder if they told him why. I mean, that is weird. I mean, you're just going to make sure every missing person is a missing person. It just sounds weird.
Exactly. And, at the time when I was talking with him, it wasn't for a movie. We were doing a photo shoot. So my mind is already racing like, oh my God, this guy is cuckoo. I'm stuck in a cornfield and he's telling me all this information. I'm like, am I going to get out of the cornfield?
Seriously, he's looking around. You're scared now.
I don't know the guy, so what's going to happen. But even like the astronaut, when he first mentioned him, that he knew the astronaut before we went into before we got into that discussion. And of course, the photo that he showed me, they're like this. It looks like a meet and greet. I
won't give it away, guys. Watch the video. This is not some astronaut. This is someone you know.
Oh yeah, this is somebody that everybody knows the name.
Yeah.
And if that's my computer, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh no, you're good.
And this person, this astronaut, has not been quiet about the UFOs and stuff. And they've been active.
And so we come out of the cornfield, we get back in his house, and he's already put the scare in me a little bit. And but we start going through some more photos for this photo shoot, as far as if there's anything I wanted to hold up, or like, a mosaic on the table of different things. And he pulls out a flight patch, and the flight, yeah, you can go to NASA and buy flight patches, but no, this was one you could tell was worn. It still had the stitches in it that had been pulled out. It wasn't something that was solid and flat where it was on a shelf. It was something that was worn. So I saw that, and then and he tells me that, yeah, that's the flight patch when he went up last time on the shuttle. And then he's going through some more photos, and I see one that he kind of tosses to the side. I said, "Oh, let me see that one." And there's the astronaut that he said he was good friends with, that's on the back deck of the house that I'm at a birthday party. So yeah, they were close. It wasn't a meet and greet acquaintance type thing. They were close people.
They knew each other, yeah.
And then he had also told me that if you look back, if you remember back, it was 2 years ago. This was June, July when this was happening, when I was at this guy's place. And I could pull the photo up, I guess.
Do you figure that guy was CIA at the time of the photo?
He was retired at that point.
Oh.
And look, he didn't even have a cell phone. He had a landline only.
Smart.
It was kind of unique. But he bought the farm. He was in a kind of rural area. There's like a small town that's maybe 7-8 miles away. When I say small town, I'm talking like 10,000 or less people. It's got a couple of gas stations, a drugstore, that type thing. I think it may have had one McDonald's, and that was like the only restaurant. But he bought it. It was a little over 150 acres, and the cornfield surrounded his house. So yes, he had neighbors, but they were, half a mile, 3/4 of a mile down the road. He had made himself as much off grid while still being on grid as possible. And he lived a very simple life. I mean, his house was 1,800 square foot brick ranch. It wasn't anything special, but I'm telling you, his wife didn't look at him like he was crazy when he was talking with me. But the thing is, this is that June or July time frame, late June, early July. And he mentioned that for me to be on the lookout, that the Pentagon was going to be releasing some information about UFOs, and they're going to tell everybody that the UFOs are real. This was like the week before that Friday that they came out, and we had that first thing where they started talking about the Tic Tac UFO.
I remember the day.
Said, yeah, that there's some, the Pentagon admitted that, yeah, UFOs, we didn't know what they are, is basically what they said at that time. And then over the past 2 years, they've gone from, we don't know what they are, to they're otherworldly, to they're not man-made, to they're doing things that we have no idea how the physics work, that type thing. And now we're, starting our own agency that looks back into just UFOs. And what's interesting about this now, remember when we had Project Blue Book? Project Blue Book was to get the information and then tell everybody they were wrong. I
remember that
you're probably a
getting on
little
TV.
younger than me, I think. But I think I was maybe 10, 12 years old, and they had released Project Blue Book it was heavily redacted, but it was an unclassified document at that time, and they released it in a little paperback book. And I live in Eastern North Carolina, and we would go to Raleigh for school shopping. And we went to the bookstore there, and I talked my parents into get me the Project Blue Book. And I read every one of those. And it's just crazy about the information that you would find in there. But Project Blue Book was to tell people that, yeah, there's no such thing. What we've got now, I think they're actually trying to look into it. The thing is, we're catching everything from the U.S. side, and I would really love to hear, but you'll never hear anything from, say, Russia or China, because their state media is going to keep anything quiet. They're not going to release any information. And frankly, the U.S., if we did hold UFOs or hold flying saucers like Bob Lazar says we've got, for instance, we would be crazy to say where they are, because if you were a Russia or a China or a hostile neighbor, so to speak, you would know where to bomb to get rid of that technology, to keep us away from it. They can't figure that out. That needs to be ours. Start thinking back to the Hitler, Germany, Nazi days. They were always looking into some of the stuff that was a little occultish as well as military. So I think you don't want to give out too much information. And I don't think the United States is going to give out everything they know. But that's also why I believe they probably do know about abductions, and that if there are, we may not even have living aliens. These could be robotic sentients. We don't know, because we just don't have proof. We haven't, the public hasn't got the proof of it yet. The government may very well, but I'm sure that they know something is going on as far as the abduction side of it.
In fact, you mentioned World War II, and the Nazis, they had a very strong interest, and it said that they not only developed anti-gravity, but they tested several things, and they were in contact with certain entities that were guiding them.
Right. And that's the
and that's where you start to sound crazy.
Blow your mind?
Now I sound crazy.
And Mark is so quiet.
No, this is great. Hearing this.
He actually is not very quiet, but he knows that this is my thing, and he goes, I'm not really into this, so I'm gonna listen to you.
No, I'm into it.
He knows that.
I'm thrilled.
See, me and my friend, we drove our asses out to the desert with high-powered binoculars, and I'm like, okay, well, what's that? And what's that? And what's that? So you get to understand, a lot of you bring someone new out there, they're like, there's UFO right there. I'm like, it's a star. It's moving. No, you're staring at it too long, and you have to understand it'll start to waver because you're staring at it. You need a point of reference. You have to understand that there's aviation rules. They have flashing lights. They have to have flashing lights. Okay. Then you see what a satellite is going to do. It's going to be moving very, very slowly on a very even trajectory. And then you start eliminating things, and you see something. You're looking at that thing, and I'm saying, well, it's too high for me to see without the binoculars. So probably not a helicopter, and maybe not a plane either, because there's nothing flashing. And what it's doing is snaking around, doing loops and stuff up there. So I cannot figure. Now you're in UFO territory.
Right. Well, look, I'm about to head out west on Saturday, and I've got a big job that's going to carry me all the way through there, and I'll be down in around the middle of the month. I'll be down toward Prescott, Arizona area. I guarantee you we could go out there in those dark skies, and I'll put this camera that's on me right now and put it on the skies. I guarantee you it wouldn't take an hour, and we'll see something flying.
No doubt about it. I was out of the city range, but on the desert floor. You get up into that elevation. Let me tell you something. I spent many, many, many nights in northern Arizona. It's the most beautiful, starriest thing. And if you put a pair of binoculars up to there, you're right. It's going to be not long before you're like, well, there's something I had no idea.
Well, I say about like the UFOs thing back in 2000. I want to say at 7. I did a mountain lion hunt um, in northern Arizona in the high desert there, and where we stayed, it was a 10-day hunt, and it was by horseback. But where we stayed, we had like a little camper that my dad and I stayed in, and then our hunting guide and his brother had a small trailer. Well, we would eat elk burgers or elk steak or whatever. We always ate elk, but we'd eat elk at night by the campfire. And when you have those dark skies, you don't have the city light pollution, and you can look up there. And well, we saw something, and I'm staring at it. I'm like, what? That's not a plane. And the guide's brother said, no, it's probably a satellite. And about time he said that, it takes a near 90-degree angle. I mean, it had a little bit of curvature to it, but it was near 90. And you go, well, that's not a satellite. But so we brushed it off. It has to be a high altitude plane or something, and just don't see the blinking lights. But it just makes you wonder, because I've done several night sky surveys where I would put the camera out, and I would do it 2 ways. One is I would do a time lapse. So then if you had something traveling, you would have like a long line, and you could see if the line curved or, something like that. But then I would also do like real-time video where I could just look at it and just see if something moves against the star field. And I mean, there's just not a night that goes by that if I have a dark sky that I can't put it up there and catch something. In the movie Incredulous, I was coming back from doing interviews, and I stopped in Roswell, and I was about 8 miles east of Roswell. There was a little rest area that I pulled into, and I got the camera out. So I'm gonna look in the sky for about an hour or so. We're supposed to have it wasn't a full moon, but we were going to have a bright moon that night. So I knew it wouldn't have very long, maybe past 10 o'clock. If the moon would, be too bright for everything anyway. But yeah, I mean, I caught 20, 30 objects in the sky. None of them were planes. They were either satellites or something else.
Have you ever seen the videos where they use infrared, like green?
Yeah.
And oh my God, there's stuff going all over in every direction.
Exactly. I would love to do something with Josh Gates sometime. I don't know if you've watched any of his stuff, but he mainly on like Discovery Channel, I think, or something like that. But they use some different things like that. Anyway, one of my interviews down in Florida, I want to say they were on the east coast of Florida, if I remember right, is what he was telling me. And they had some night vision goggles or night vision binoculars. And he said, everybody had cameras, and, they had just regular binoculars looking, and they would pass the night vision stuff around. Well, when he got it, as soon as he put it up to his face, he was like, oh my God, do y'all see that? And everybody's like, see what? I said, it's right there. Yeah. They gave him a laser pointer. And when he did the laser pointer, he pointed at him. Yeah, what they thought was just, sky. All of a sudden you could see the glow when it hit it. Where it was reflected off. And so, other people started grabbing the goggles. And I've got, I just got back from doing a TV pilot in Tampa, Florida. And on the way back, he said he had some documents for me that he couldn't find when I first interviewed him. And so I stopped by his house and picked those up. And he's got the drawing of how it come. He said it was really, he couldn't think of the word night vision. And he was saying, like, is it infrared? And finally said, you talking about like night vision where it's green? He said, exactly. It was just this big green object in the sky, and it was huge. He said, but if you looked at it with your bare eyes, you saw stars and stuff. When you put those up to it, you didn't see the stars. You saw it, and it flew right over top of us. And I mean, just again, it's easy to count somebody off and go, they're crazy, that type of stuff. But you can tell he was telling the truth. You could see like his blood pressure build up from it. I mean, there was genuine excitement and anxiety in what he was telling me. And yeah, so but I've got the documentation of where it came in, and he's got some drawings of it, and where it went inland. It went over one of the local cities there, he said, and it hovered there for a little while, and then it left. And he said everybody was just, they didn't see it, and all of a sudden, once they got it on the goggles and everybody was passing the goggles around, everybody saw it.
Oh my goodness. And the one I saw, they were actually using a laser and it started flashing back at them the same number of flashes. What about, have you ever talked to any other researchers? Dr. Greer, he's made a pretty good living.
Yeah, and we talked about him too. I think he's out of Charlotte.
What do you think about him in his work? I see them meditate, I see amber lights appear on the horizon. Yeah. I don't know,
sometimes, I don't know how much y'all stalked my Facebook post recently, but I made a post the other night that some people, I've reached out to several of the well-known, I'm not going to say ufologists, but people that are researching it. And some of them, and I won't mention any names, some of them, they feel like this is their avenue to become famous, become wealthy, become the wanted product, whatever. My goal is more of, let's just get the truth out there. For instance, Encounters, we're going to have that on a streaming service, but the streaming service is free to subscribe, and Encounters is going to be free to watch. I'm not trying to pull in any money off of it. I haven't done any crowdfunding for anything like that. I'm just trying to get the word out. I'm lucky enough I get to travel throughout the U.S. and what I do, so I can set up these interviews and get them done while I'm doing my other stuff.
Cool, brother.
I think
this is important stuff.
Yeah, some of them, some people are fake, and then there's others that are genuine. Even with one of the interviews I had, he was talking about how he had gone to a UFO convention and Travis Walton was there, and
Fire in the Sky.
Yeah, he loves Travis Walton.
Talk about Northern Arizona. Yeah.
But he said the weird thing is you have what is called space gypsies. He said these are the ones that look like they're cosplaying, and they're saying they're from Sirius or they're from Andromeda, that type thing. They're saying that they are aliens. They're saying that not that there are, but they are. Where they're capitalizing on the movement and on people's fear and excitement. But then you've got those that I have not interviewed anybody yet that I didn't believe what they were telling me that they didn't believe. In other words, if we put them on a lie detector, I'm 100% sure they would pass because they honestly believe what they're telling me. And again, we know, or the way I feel, everything they say may not be the truth, but none of what they're saying is lies because they can be. It's that, again, that couple thing where once you get caught cheating the first time, then every phone call from there on out is possibly somebody you're cheating with. The government's able to play that mentality. I mean, we're humans, so that's what our brains do. But yeah, Greer, he's got some amazing information.
He did do that disclosure project, which was cool. He organized that and brought all those people in, and you can't really, you watch all those people and you can't say there's not something.
Exactly. And then, even like we mentioned the other night, Whitley Strieber and Zechariah Stitchin. And I mean, there's a lot of this stuff that, a reasonable person can kind of make sense out of it. And I've also mentioned in the movie that I don't know how y'all are. I am religious. I'm Christian. I don't necessarily go to church every Sunday, but even as a Christian, I'm not taught that there's nothing else but us. I mean, Genesis has, the fallen angels and the giants and stuff like that. So we believe there's something out there. I mean, God is something else that's out there. So there's
a whole other mystery, the giants of the Bible. That's just, it's the UFO thing will lead you to these things. I didn't know. I mean, the first thing that the UFO amazed me was it went back into our history so far. I'm like, wait, what? This has been around for this long. In fact, it goes into pre-recorded history. I'm like, oh my goodness. So they've been here maybe the whole time.
And when we're going back to, the Sumerians and stuff, now, kind of a side note, I read something today. Did you know that Stonehenge was private property like less than 100 years ago?
Wow.
Who owned it?
It was falling apart, and they auctioned the land off, and a guy won it for $6,600, and then he donated it to the government to protect.
Oh my goodness!
Can you imagine?
You own Stonehenge for a short time, you just donate it away. Wow.
And then I also read earlier today that there's a lake that's, I want to say it's in Japan, if I remember right, but there's a lake that's started drying up, kind of like what's going on in Nevada and California. And there's what's called the Japanese Stonehenge that they found at the bottom of the lake. You have the pillars and the column.
That's right. I forgot. I heard about that.
So that's kind of interesting as well. So, but yeah, you can get into the ancient alien thing. I guess Stitching kind of did that with the Sumerians, brought that to the forefront, mostly.
You can see that in the movie The Fourth Kind. They talk about that. And that's a scary film. See, I'd love to talk to Travis Walton for this reason. You hear these stories. First, I saw Fire in the Sky, and they treated him pretty harsh. In fact, I found Arnie's description of the alien really shockingly like they depicted in Fire in the Sky. I mean, literally. And the treatment of Travis, also, what Arnie was talking about seemed more tantamount what really happened, because you hear Travis later kind of tell a more softer story. I would really like to see if he was treated honestly well or not, because in the story he was not. And Arnie said they literally just dump you cold and naked, and that's how they did it in the movie.
And they test you, then they experiment on you.
Even the physical description of the alien Arnie gave was so right on with Fire in the Sky. I'm like, man, maybe there was something more to that than just Hollywood stepping in and going, we're going to rewrite this to make it scary.
And the way it's been described to me by even some of these past interviews for Encounters, we keep seeing the face with no expressions, the big bulbous eyes that are blackened, the really small slit mouth, perfectly smooth skin or type of flesh, right? Well, they're explaining to me that that's not entirely correct, that they do have bigger eyes, but their eyes are more like ours, but the sockets are what's actually black. So far away it would look like they have these big eyes, but closer you can see that it's just the socket, and it's actually kind of scaly in there. And he said they, up close, they do have expressions. They're not emotionless. They have expressions in their face, and in the muscle tone, I guess, in their face will contort to how we do smiles or anger or fear, that type thing, that they have some type of movement in their face. So that was one thing I found interesting with the incredulous. And one of the other things, it's been reported that you can find UFOs near nuclear sites easier than you can just random looking up in the sky. And in fact, I've got a lady, she has emailed me 5, 6, 7 times, I guess, where she's been out in the past few weeks, and she's got her camera up in the sky. She lives near a nuclear facility. And on my way back on this next trip, I'm going to stop by and see her, and we're going to put the cameras up and see what we can capture. But
nice,
she's seeing them every night. And, it's tough to tell because we don't have a lot of foreground to see the movement in the camera, that type thing. So you try to see if you can find a star in the background and see if it stays steady while the light's moving. but she's got a lot of this stuff that she sent me, and I'm gonna try to put these cameras that I know what they can do and I know how to use them, and see if I can capture something with them. But it's near a nuclear facility. But anyway, where I was headed with this is, we know that UFOs around nuclear facilities are more commonly seen.
They straight shut them off.
The some of the information I'm getting from the interviewees is, it's not that they're trying to protect us from nuclear power. They're not trying to teach us nuclear power or any of that. It's possibly, and this is only me trying to deduce everything, okay? The aliens may come from a world that maybe doesn't have the atmosphere we do, doesn't have the magnetism to keep out the radiation. So they actually need the radiation like a plant needs the sun to make chloroform, or make the chlorophyll, not chloroform, but make the chlorophyll. In other words, they use the radiation to survive like we use oxygen to survive. So that's why they are found near volcanoes where radioactivity is higher, or near nuclear plants where radioactivity is higher.
Volcanoes have radioactivity?
You can get radiation from the heat and the lava and that type of stuff. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's a possibility. If that's why they're if the aliens are congregating near those areas, because they need the radiation to live.
You know what else they like? I think lightning.
Oh yeah, exactly. And see, again, think about like the different
that's radiation for sure.
The volcanoes and stuff, you see a lot of lightning there because of the static electricity in the air from the magma flowing and that type of stuff. So it's really interesting. You just wish you constantly want, okay, I just need a little bit more. I need one more bit of proof, and then you have the next person and their stories are kind of similar, and like, yeah, but I still need that one more.
It is so elusive. No one can really catch that dragon.
It's a deep rabbit hole.
Oh man. Do you think the government will go so far as to fake something like that to gain control of the public? I hear talk like that. Has anybody ever suggested something like that?
I think the government will fake something like that to throw us off.
Oh, that's a good point.
If we're on the right pattern. I do, I think there's something that's going on. But they could easily try to throw the public off with something completely on a tangent from it, and really, screw with our brains. But I mean, let's face it, since the government's come out with this, I mean, back in the 70s and 80s, if the government would have come out and said that there was UFOs, the Vatican would have been on fire.
Seriously. You guys, I do remember one other time where they came out, and it was an updated weather balloon report that they actually released in the end. It was in the 90s, and here it comes. And we thought, okay, X-Files is on, Dark Skies. You ever see a show called Dark Skies?
Yeah.
Where they just literally, it takes place in the 1960s, and the blackout, the Kennedy assassination, everything was UFO involved. It was a great show. But anyway, I don't know. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, and I'll mention this too about the government. Could the government be throwing us off completely, saying, hey, let's bring up UFOs and aliens and see if we can get people to worry about that, so that we can do whatever we're doing politically and not have to worry about it?
Because when you said that, I thought, you know what? They're going to go right to Tucker Carlson. They're going to put it on there, and they're going to say, hey, we're looking at this. Here's what they're throwing us off. Maybe they have a big problem, but they don't want us to know that. They're taking our people probably, and they don't want us to know that. But what they're saying is, okay, we're looking into this thing, so everybody be calm. What do you think of that?
It very much so. And, that's one of the taboo things if you go onto these Reddit sites or whatever, that's one thing they don't mention is first time somebody says, well, the government knows somebody's getting abducted, they shut you up. Yeah, no, we're going to brush that one off. You might want to stay quiet on that. I have had one of the people I've interviewed say that he knows someone that used to work with the government that it didn't have an official position, but his position was to off people. And, so, whenever I have somebody I'm interviewing say something like that to me, okay, then why are you telling me? Yeah. Well, this one particularly said, man, I'm 75 years old. You think I care if they come kill me tomorrow or not? I said, I might not live to tomorrow if they don't come kill me. So, let's get it out there. And I said, okay, so do I need to worry about it? And he said, possibly. But if you get enough information out there, they won't do anything to you. They'll just try to make you look like you're crazy. Or that you're trying to make money, or that, you're just trying to do it for the fame. And yes, I'm sure that happens. I mean, well, Bob Lazar said the same thing happened to him. They try to shut him up by having the IRS audit him every other year.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Jeez. Oh, that's worse than alien contact.
Guess what you got to look for it after for your 2022 taxes there, Brian.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Gosh, what was I gonna say? I was just gonna say something. I lost my train of thought. Mark, what are you thinking? What do you think about all this?
No, I'm with you guys 100%. It makes total sense, And when you look at all this stuff that's coming out, and look at in movies too, there's so much content on aliens or Stargate and all this. So
what I was gonna say was that last guy in Insidious he said something to me that really made a lot of sense. He kind of talked about the radiation and his theories about that, but he basically said they don't know. They don't know what to do. They don't know what the hell to do. And that's probably the biggest part of it.
Right.
If they did have some kind of contact, they must have told us to sit still and shut up, or else,
And, again, we can go political with this, just from, the IRS stuff back when the term patriot first, started becoming popular. The IRS would shut down any group that was that had patriot in the name and not allow them to be a nonprofit, for instance. And then you've got the stuff that the Democrats are saying the Republicans did one thing, Republicans saying the Democrats did one thing, and everybody's against the FBI all of a sudden. They don't know what to do. But the one key thing I got out of that very first talk in Incredulous was, or is actually the second interview in Incredulous, he said that President Carter wanted to know about it. He found out about it and he got the documentation. And Carter, by all means, was and is a good man. Nobody can debate the fact whether he's a good human or not. Yeah, you can politically, you can say what you want to about him, but as far as a human, he's a kind-hearted man. And when he read the documents on the aliens, he immediately said, I'm shutting it down. I don't care what you say, it's over. And they said, you don't want to do that. Well, they said there were 7 scientists that were killed after that program had been shut down. And I tried to dig into it and I couldn't find, I found sections of scientists that died within a month or 2 period, but I didn't find it with Carter. So I don't know if he changed the name on me or not, changed the president to protect himself. I'm not sure, but I did find a group, even during the, when we were doing the Manhattan Project, we had, it was like 5 that died and 6 others that were in the same room. They survived, but they had heavy radiation sickness. But at the time they didn't know anything about radiation sickness. So, I don't know if your stories start getting mixed up. But again, the main thing was, he said, when the presidents usually don't know, Congress doesn't know. And the reason is they're considered temporary employees by the government. Because it's the lifers that are in the government. Those are the ones that are running these programs and that actually know. He said, why are we going to give information to somebody that's going to be in office for 4 years and they can use whatever he wants to against us when he gets out? And that makes sense. It's a temporary employee. I mean, that's what they are. They're temporarily hired employees. Meanwhile, you do have the lifers that are in the FBI. And I guess that's what Trump would call the swamp, or whatever we would say there, but that those are the ones that are running the government. And I think we're seeing that more and more today, that we do have a faction of people that are running the government that are not elected officials.
They literally seem to be operating in the open now. I heard Trump asked by Lou Dobbs about that, and he said he did not know, but if he found out, he would share the information. But I heard George Bush Jr. say, yeah, I know, I can't tell you anything.
Yeah.
So I think it might not just be the president, it's the background and how secretive their lives are and stuff like that.
And it doesn't make you wonder, who's on that on this UFO committee? Is it Rubio? Is it Mark Rubio that's on there?
I don't know. I think you're right. I think it was.
I would
Rubio.
love to know what maybe some of them know.
That's a good point.
Just they know they can't say it out in public. They can't say it on the Senate floor, on the House floor, but if they know something just a little bit extra.
I think your CIA guys
can you
are more
imagine
likely.
what John Glenn would know as both an astronaut and a senator?
It's sad that our astronauts have to fight to get attention to say things.
Yeah.
Buzz Aldrin, man, he just goes on and on and on and on.
And yeah, Aldrin does. I would love to interview him. I just I don't see any filter on him. I just think he would blurt whatever out. But who was it? I'll have to think of it in a second, and I'll come back to it. But the debriefing, that's where I'm trying to go with it. The debriefing, they say, is so strong that the operative I told you about that worked for the government, but didn't actually work for an agency with the government.
Yeah.
He said the debriefing, when you finish something, he said, the way the guy explained it to me is he would know what his target is. And that's the only thing he would know. He wouldn't know why the target is the target. He would just know that's the target. And as soon as its business is taken care of, the debriefing and the mental strain that goes into him afterwards, he doesn't even know who the target, he couldn't tell you who he may have killed last week, for instance. And man, if stuff like that is real, and it's totally about aliens and alien abductions that the government's trying to hide or cover up, or trying to keep people that are getting too close to the real truth. I mean, we have enough really crazy stuff out there, whether you're talking about Alex Jones's type stuff or even Aliens on History Channel, that we can make ourselves go on a tangent so far away from the real truth that the government, like, let them do it. Let them handle, they'll handle their own stuff. But then when you get somebody that is actually on that line where they say they're too close, we need to put them down. That's a scary thought.
Yeah.
And, the other real scary thought is, say you've got somebody that, I mean, you can tell they fully believe they were abducted. Which is scarier, that they were abducted or that they weren't abducted, but they believe it? I mean, both are not good situations.
Yeah. Well, obviously, though, the scariest thing to me is the guy in, the other countries. They tell the same story. I always was fascinated by the thing in Nome, Alaska. The FBI goes there 2,000 times a year, and you can't even get there unless you fly in. And
exactly.
There's all those, I urge everyone to watch The Fourth Kind. It's creepy, though, but it just seems to be more along the line of the truth than Close Encounters, where, they're going to escort you into a big floating city and take you away to never die or whatever. It's so frightening.
Are you a Twilight Zone fan at all?
I was, sure.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
You remember the one where the aliens made themselves known? Take me to your leader, and they're bringing all the humans onto the spaceship. Meanwhile, you have like some people are trying to decipher the book that they had, the manual. And then when they finally figured it out, they rush, she rushes up to the flying saucer while her friend is, boarding the flying saucer. She says, "We figured out the name of the book. It's To Serve Man, but it's a cookbook." You know?
Oh, wow.
I don't remember that Twilight Zone. I think the
that's-
same thing happened on The Simpsons once, though.
It probably did, but it's one of the classic Twilight Zone.
It sounds familiar. I
episodes.
think I might have seen it a while back.
Well, one of the guys I interviewed, his hobby is like he's got like the old 16 millimeter and 8mm reels of like the big reels of the old monster movies and stuff like that. Well, he has that mask in his house. And first time I was like, oh my God, that brings back so many memories.
Wow.
But he like he paints mask and makes mask of everything from the creature from the Black Lagoon to, Twilight Zone episodes, like the one with William Shatner when you had the gremlin on the wing.
Oh gosh.
I don't know if you remember that one, but
it's a guy in a fuzzy
To Serve
bear suit.
Man. Yeah, I think it's either I think Netflix had it at one time, had the old Twilight Zone stuff, and but To Serve Man, that's the episode you want to watch.
Oh wow, I'll have to check it out tonight.
It gives you a twist, kind of like like what you would see out of a M. Night Shyamalan or a Jordan Peele type movie. So
wow, that's great. Yeah, just don't go wandering in. I mean, think of the message they decided when they're writing this. Okay, well, this is going to seem all real nice until the very end, everybody. So
they're here to serve us. Yep, they are.
What's funny to me is like you can see UFOs in 2,000-year-old paintings of Jesus. Have you seen those? So like and I see like things in France where they show like spheres in the sky and stuff like that. Have you researched any of that ancient painting stuff?
Yeah, it's and that goes into the ancient aliens type, that theory. And again, go back to the Sumerians. The
people don't understand that the ancient Sumerians literally had the solar system put on tablets. So either they someone had to guide them or help them, or that's really
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's now, and that brings up another thing, and I don't know if I'm going to go, and I would have to have a whole different set of interviews. So I don't know if I'm going to go into that, at least on this series, maybe in a future one. But how does some being, if they're from a system that's even 50 light years away, how do they make it here and survive? And that's why I wonder, are these beings synthetic and not organic? Are they, is it an AI type technology that's just in an organic type body so it doesn't die?
Yeah.
Because I just don't, even
warping
with
space, it's theoretical.
When you're talking like the gravitational field, like Bob Lazar talks about on, the way he described it, even with that, I don't, especially physics right now does not make that work, where you can go from here to here with nothing in between. So again, that's just a whole new level of science. I can understand if they have something that could create I can fathom it a little bit better. Let me say that I can't understand it, but I can fathom a little bit better. Say there's a gravitational field that they're able to make a massive gravitational field, but in a localized spot. So that's why it can transfer from air to water seamlessly and move around. And now there was one interview Lazar did that I really liked. He was talking about how the pilots were seeing the object kind of shake around and move around. He said nothing can move like that. It doesn't make sense. But then Lazar was saying it's not that the actual object was doing that. It's that the field around it makes us see the things around it moving like that. And it's probably just nice and steady on the inside. And, that makes sense. What we're seeing visually is they're waves, light is waves. So the waves are distorted in the way they hit us, just like if you were to have something in front of you with like 5 slits in it and you put a light there, you don't get 5 slits, you get 20 slits on the other side where the light comes through, that type thing. So
what about anti-gravity? Has anyone said that they've witnessed anti-gravity or that it does exist? There's guys like, have you ever heard of a guy named John Hutchison? He did things with, like, when there was a big oil spill in the Gulf, he used like, what was it? Frequency things, machines
it's
that literally,
frequency.
yeah. And I've seen him release videos where things just went whoop, like bowling balls went up because he shot like an anti-gravity beam and it just threw it up in the air.
Exactly. And okay, and that brings up something. Is that anti-gravity, or is that just a different type of propulsion?
Yeah, true.
And I think that goes into what I've been able to study with Lazard, the way he's explained things. It's not element 115 is what he called it. It doesn't create anti-gravity, it creates another gravity. So it's able to separate itself like that. But again, like the travel thing, I don't know that we could have true, I mean, even if we had it theoretically, I don't know we could have true time travel. Just where I'm at right now and where I was when we started this an hour ago, the Earth travels 10,000 miles per hour in space. I'm not going to show up in the same spot.
That's a good.
How do you, how do you coordinate
that.
something to say I want to be in this spot on this planet, even though the planet may move, and then you start dealing with hundreds or thousands of years where you've got the galaxies turning, the solar system's turning, the whole galaxy's moving, and that's, with space being infinite, that's a hard thing. It's not like we can give it GPS coordinates because there's nothing to base those coordinates off of, because everything moves and everything's separating itself.
I can understand traveling fast enough to speed time up, but going backwards,
yeah,
I don't know.
And that's one of the things that people wonder, are aliens time travelers from the future? And that's where we get into kind of like what they talked about in the Marvel movies with Thor, that space magic type stuff. That,
Michael Crichton wrote Jurassic Park, but he also wrote a movie called Sphere, where they find a plane at the bottom of the ocean from the future, and it's got an American flag on it, and then they go in and find the sphere. It's really great. Yeah.
And that reminds me, one of the, as far as a movie that I went into, and there's really been 2 movies that had my heart racing when I left the theater. And this is the first time I saw Hellraiser.
Oh yeah,
that's back when early 90s, late
that.
80s, something like
that. Not at all. Yeah.
That one got me. And then Event Horizon, for whatever reason, that movie, I was so stressed out when I left the theater. But that Event Horizon reminds me of Spheres, why I was mentioning that. But that was a really good, interesting.
I remember that really well, and that was probably the most terrifying sci-fi thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And talking about moving through dimensions, dimensional jump. Does anybody ever say dimension when they're being interviewed?
Yes.
How do they do that? What are they talking?
This one that I've done, he explicitly talks about dimensional travel more than anything, more than actual beings, that you're able to touch. And it really gets kind of crazy and out there. It's hard to fathom, but
is it physical or non-physical?
His is more non-physical. It's more spiritual, I guess. I'm assuming you saw Black Panther. I
actually didn't get a chance to see that.
You need to watch. Anyway, Black Panther, part of it's where T'Challa goes to the spirit realm and he's talking to his father. It's a more spiritual thing, is the way he explained it. Now, one of my other interviews, him and his second wife were in the kitchen. They had come in from work. They were cooking together. She was cooking, and he said he was kind of just like moving plates and stuff around, right? And he said, and they heard like a pop, and they turn around, and they are in the living room. The way the kitchen was, you have a make sure you can see this on the camera. you have the countertop, and then it's got the opening with the cabinets up above it, and it's almost like a little bar there. All right, so they're looking through that hole across the bar, and he said it's a square doorway, but the doorway it looks like it's got gold bubbles all over it as far as the frame. He said that was the best way to explain the texture or the feel of it. Just looked like gold bubbles. And he said somebody took 2 steps into the living room, one or 2 steps into the living room, and turned and looked at them. And when they did that, he ran around his wife around the bar to get into the living room. As he got into the living room, the person stepped back in and the portal closed.
Oh,
and
my goodness.
Him and his wife described the exact same thing, except for one detail. His wife said that the person had on like a business suit. Couldn't really get facial features, but it was a business suit. Meanwhile, he said what he saw was somebody in a military uniform.
Goodness. And
he said, based on that, he believes it's one-dimensional and that they can project whatever they want into your mind. He said, but as soon as the person, it didn't last 5 seconds. He saw somebody, he saw this bright light, a portal with gold bubbles around it. Somebody stepping in, he runs around the corner, and then they back into the portal and it closes. Well, the next interesting thing about that is it was like 3 days later, and he's driving home and he sees that his wife has been pulled over. And so he, pulls over there to the side, and he worked for the city, so he knew the police officers. And he was like, what's going on? He said, lady was speeding, and she's talking some gibberish. And he said, that's my wife. You mind if I talk to her? He said, man, if I knew it was your wife, I wouldn't have pulled her. I'm sorry. And I intend on trying to pull these records, by the way, because she got a ticket out of this. But he said, yeah, talk to her. That's fine. Well, they both go over there. The person that they saw step out of the portal, she had got home, and he was at the top of their stairs this time.
Oh,
and so she ran out and drove off, and he said she made us move. She was scared to be there anymore. And that's kind of scary. And he believes that was government going through a dimensional portal. It was some type of governmental official. Now he has a scar on his foot, where he had a tag pulled out of it, and that's the way he described it. It was a tag, maybe a little bit bigger than a BB, about the size of a pearl, but it was grayish and fleshy, and it had veins and stuff in it, but it wasn't connected to his foot. It was just in his foot. And he said once he was having some bone spurs or something on his other foot, and the doctor saw this growth on this foot and said, let me check that out. And when he pulled it out, first of all, he said it kept moving away from him, but he finally got it out.
Literally, the thing was running away from the forceps.
They would go in with the forceps
and
try to grab it, and it was moving. It would move away. Oh. And he said, again, I'm going by what the man's telling me. I don't have that documentation there. I do have pictures of the scar on his foot. But he said that the doctor's eyes just got big. He said, man, it's moving away. I can't get it. And so he had like the nurse come over, and anyway, he said ever since he's pulled that tag, he hasn't had any more UFO experiences. He thinks that was an implant.
Yeah.
He said,
this is in the documentary. Everybody, check it out. You are gonna die. Tell him what happened to the doctor's office when he went back there.
But he said it's not a. We think of an implant as being something metallic or mechanical, electrical, or something like that. He said, it's an organic type of thing, and he said I can only figure that that's what I was being tracked with. That's because he had multiple experiences. He woke up one night. You've heard of like the sleep paralysis, and he was asleep, and he woke up, and there's 6 what we would call grays around the bed. And he said they were all like 3.5, 4 foot tall. He said, and then there was one at the head of the bed standing beside him that was more maybe 5.5 foot tall, about 1.5 foot taller than the other ones. And he said, the five didn't say anything. You didn't see much emotion in their face. Again, there's texture in their face, but it's not you don't see emotion there. But the main one, he said, all he could do was sit there and move his eyes. He said, but it was communicating with him and, asking him if he wanted to go with him. He was like, hell no, I don't want to go with you. And, eventually they left and it was like 3 a.m. We've got a UFO report from about 5 miles from there where somebody else saw a UFO that same night at 3:15.
That's great.
So, that's kind of strange.
Sleep paralysis, very common,
Yeah,
highly reported thing.
And I asked him like the tall guy, and I'll get that. I asked him about the tall alien. Was it a different species or how would you describe it? And he said, kind of think of it like you have the queen bee and the worker bee. He said it was the leader, the whatever, and then you had the workers were the other ones that were there around him. He said you could tell that the tall one was the intelligent one, the leader, because one, it was communicating with him, and it kind of, even though they weren't moving, you could tell it was the one calling the shots of what was to be done. As far as the reporting, that's through MUFON, MUFON. I think it's. I'm gonna turn. My head will be turned on screen. Yeah.
MUFON, they've been doing that for 20,
it's
30
been going
years
on
now.
Forever. Yeah, it's at MUFON.com.
Yeah.
It looks like somebody's trying to start a MUFON.org also.
Oh.
But it's MUFON.com, and not only can you do your reports there. I didn't go off screen, did I?
No, you're good.
Okay, there it is. It disappeared on my monitor there. I'm sorry. But not only can you report stuff there, and I guess this is for people that have had either seen UFOs, even if you see like a streaking meteor, report it. Because even that stuff, while it's not necessarily a flying saucer or UFO,
it is something entering the atmosphere.
Yeah, it collaborates that. Yeah, we had a meteor that came in, that type of thing.
True.
But you can report there, but you can also look the stuff up, and you can look up by state, by city, by the year, and all that type of stuff. Florida is one of the hot spots. California is a hot spot. Arizona and Colorado, just north of the Great Sand Dunes National Park, is a hot spot in Colorado. And I did do some night sky surveys there, and there was one I did there. You could tell the planes. I mean, planes are easy to spot when on time lapses. They take up long streaks and that type of stuff. You can usually see like bright spots in the streak from where the lights are flashing. Satellites, it's not as long, but it's nice and steady. Meteors that are entering the atmosphere, they're pointed at each end, so it'll be like it's almost like a toothpick look. And then there was one that I had and I would put it into a moving time lapse, and you can see the star field kind of doing like this. And there's this one thing, maybe like at 4:30, 5 o'clock on the screen, that maybe moves an inch over what would have been a 5-hour period. But it's not moving with the star field, it's moving separate. Well, you don't really have static satellites like that. So it's not a plane. So that's something I can't tell what it is. I'll never be able to find out what it is. So technically, is it a UFO? Yes, but eventually I might be able to find out something that does that. Out of Roswell, I had on real video, not on time lapses, on straight video from the camera, I have two objects that are going side by side, and one in front of the other, actually, almost like this, moving. Well, typically you don't see satellites moving in pairs. Plus, satellites
we saw objects flying in pairs like that in when we were out there with our binoculars. We saw that more than once.
You'll see Starlink where there's like a bunch of them, a bunch in a line. Well, I saw these, and typically satellites will move from west to east in the skyline. Well, these were moving south to north. So that was kind of strange. And so I did some research on that. It's in the movie just as something to question, but I firmly believe that those were probably Tandem X satellites. From what I can tell, they'll do that orbital pattern. and they do travel in tight pairs like that. One is like receives information, transfers it to the other to transmit out or something like that. So, you know, I'm trying to be honest in what I see as well. But the thing is, it's just, you don't expect just to look up in the sky and you see two lights moving together and you know they're not planes, and then they disappear when they get, you know, away from where the sun can actually hit them, because you know they're in high orbit if that happens.
What
It's
about
not
the
something
NASA
that they're emitting light, it's that they're reflecting light.
Yeah, yeah. What about the NASA footage itself? Have you ever seen the footage where that long tether breaks away and it starts floating out into space, and there's all this stuff? In fact, there's big flashing orb things that are big as a state, big as Texas.
And NASA's got a lot in it. There was something, this has been within the last week, it's since been taken down. And because when I responded to it, I said, next time you see this, start getting screenshots or screen recordings. But I don't know how to explain it. It's something that's up there near the space station, and it's, you know, you don't have planes there. It wasn't a craft coming in to restock it or anything like that. And it was just making all kinds of weird movements. And they were saying, NASA hasn't caught this yet. You got to look at this. And, you know, sure enough, within 3 hours, they had taken it down. You could no longer pull it up. I mean, we had the link up on it. Obviously, I'm in a bunch of these UFO groups trying to find people that'll interview with me. And let me make that case real quick. Anybody that's listening to this, if you have had an encounter of some sort, I'm not talking about just seeing a light in the sky, but actually have had an encounter, and that's why you're watching this. The more people that come out, the better we're going to be able to attack the stigma that, you know, I want to hear the stories. I want to be able to tell the stories. I will hide your identity, but I want you on camera. I'll silhouette you out where you're just a black body against a white background is fine. But I need that voice out there for others to know that you're not the only one and you're not crazy. Because there's just, I've been contacted by too many people that, yeah, again, there's some that are doing it because they can feel a part of the group, I guess, but there's people out there that are sincere that something has happened.
People are scared. I mean, literally, like that, the guy you were interviewed, his experiences were just so terrifying. He must have been really relieved once that thing came out of his foot and it all stopped.
Oh yeah. And you know, I interviewed one other guy. He says he has 2 implants. He's got one that's across here, and then he's got one in his leg. And he said that's from 2 different species.
Oh my gosh.
Now, you know, I don't have an X-ray machine to look into that.
Do you believe in,
he
like,
believes it?
Do you believe in, like, maybe there's like breakaway societies? You know, I remember an old story about Admiral Byrd, and he took a fleet down into the South Pole. It wasn't the North Pole. I think it was the South Pole. And supposedly these things came up out of water and basically kicked his fleet's ass. And he went limping home with this story. Have you heard anything about that?
I read about Admiral Byrd a long time ago, and you know, that's the whole world underneath the world type thing, and that's kind of carried over into the whole hollow moon theory. You know, the movie Moonfall was kind of about that, and you know that you supposedly have a hum on the moon.
Then they set off a nuke and made it ring like a bell.
Yeah, you know, so and all right, now maybe this is less about UFOs, but go on a slight tangent. Just like we just shot the rocket into the asteroid.
Yeah.
Doesn't it make you wonder that, okay, what if the calculations actually showed the asteroid was going to hit us and this wasn't just a test thing? You know, it was going to hit us in maybe 30 years or something. So, you know,
Didn't think about that.
That's not bad.
If I was NASA, if I was the government,
we're just
I
testing.
think that's what I would do.
After movies like Armageddon, that is what you should do.
Yeah, you don't make it right off the bat, but then the thought is, okay, we just shot a rocket that we were hoping we were going to hit the asteroid. So we hit the asteroid, but maybe we didn't hit it exactly where we wanted to. And now we have the whole butterfly effect with several asteroids that are now going to spin closer to us or whatever. It's one of those things where, you have to trust people. And I mean, even the greatest doctors sometimes have people down on the operating table.
Good point.
Really good point.
Very good point. What do you think about modern facilities like that go on? Like, say, I've heard that there's a big thing going on under like the Denver airport.
Oh yeah, I was just there a few weeks ago, and I was looking for anything.
And they had to remove all of this creepy end of the world art.
Yeah,
gargoyles coming out of suitcases, Nazi-esque looking soldiers with gas masks, children on fire. What do you think prompted all of that stuff?
Man, it would be so easy just to do nothing but occult, paranormal, and conspiracy theory movies.
Listen to us. I could go on for 2 more hours.
There's so much material to talk about. But yeah, the Denver airport with the Underground Society, that's that's interesting. Then of course, you find out about like the catacombs under Paris or under some of the European cities that are like that too, that they really are there, and they obviously didn't have the technology we got now. So and have you heard the thing about Walmart?
No. Oh, no. Wait, that they have kind of like underground things connecting all the stores for doomsday. Yeah, wow. That's right. Oh my gosh,
it's an underground network from all the Walmarts.
Oh,
and
wow.
It springs forward from things like what Mattress Warehouse has got to be. There should be no reason you have a Mattress Warehouse on every more than you have McDonald's. But do we sell that many mattresses? It's got to be a drug front, that type of thing.
Oh, that's kind of, I didn't even think about that.
That is interesting.
So, you can get on Reddit and find whatever theory you want to find.
That's true.
Again, Reddit's fun. Again, that's what I'm saying about the government too, is we can come up with so many of our own way off theories that the government will just let us do it. It's just every now and then you get somebody that's on the right track. And that's the ones that they're going to stop.
A great movie was made about Roswell, starring Kyle MacLachlan, and he played Jesse. Oh God, what's his name? Anyway, and he ended up talking to Martin Sheen, who was like a government guy, and he was saying, "Well, this stuff is just so crazy. We don't have to do anything because no one's going to believe you anyway." And so there's really no physical evidence to speak of. So, you can just say whatever you want, and I can tell you the truth now, but it's really not going to do you any good.
I was trying to see if I could find the name of that movie real quick, but I couldn't. But yeah, I remember that. And yeah, that's the thing is that's what I've been warned about. They're going, if I get too close, they're going to either try to show that I'm doing it for fame, doing it for fortune, I'm crazy, or everything's just fictional anyway.
What do you think too close is? You think because you're getting super rich, or because you actually found something that might?
I don't think they care in fact, if you make money, you're probably easier to write off as far as, he's just doing it for money. I think it's more especially along the lines of if the government's actually involved with abductees, if not just that they know, it's like the guy said in the movie, what can we do about it? If the government wouldn't be able to do anything to the aliens anyway. True, but if we find out that not only does the government know about it, but they're actually involved in assisting, it's something like that where you get enough facts in place. Yeah, I think that may be the point where you either need to shut up or get out. That might be the too close part.
That's very profound. Maybe we should leave it there. I know we've been going on for an hour and a half, and I could do another hour and a half.
I
but
know, easily.
I'm gonna probably, you know,
I got an idea.
yeah.
Yeah.
What
should
about
show
once
your-
I finish Encounters and we get some more interviews
Yeah.
in place? That well, let's shoot another one up here.
No,
That is
I was just gonna
exactly
say
where I
we
was
have
going.
to have you back. Yeah.
I loved your first documentary. Can we see the clip of Encounters? Can we run that thing you sent? Can we run any of that real quick?
Have y'all got that on there?
Yeah. Can
Which
we-
one? We have the Dave Baker and the Marion
You want to run both?
Morris.
Yeah,
Marion
yeah.
Morris,
Can you give us a
can
little
run
feed?
both.
Give us a little intro on that.
Yeah,
What are
let's do
those?
the Dave Baker one first.
All right. Feel free
All
to
right.
talk while it's going too.
Dave Baker was a very interesting interview. Both of them, like I said, if nothing else, they at least feel very sincere in what they're saying. I believe that they believe what they're telling me. Do I believe everything that they're telling me? I don't know, but I believe that they believe everything they're telling me.
Yeah. Perception is a weird thing.
Yeah.
And there's so
I mean,
much going on that it has to be that some people are actually experiencing something really extraordinary.
Yeah.
Now, some people they get swept up in the whole thing, just like the stargazers who are kind of new and they see, oh, I see something. Well, after a while, you learn to recognize that you don't actually see something. But yeah,
And that's one thing I'm trying to. It may be the ultimate question I'm trying to answer in Encounters is why are people that have actually had one-on-one, I don't want to say close encounters of third kind. I'm talking physical contact.
yeah.
Why do so many of those people have multiple encounters? What
Yeah.
makes them special? Are they being tracked so that they can keep being looked at?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
So that's one of the interesting questions I've come up on the interview so far. But if you got those
Right
clips, you
in
can
when
roll.
it starts.
So this ship, it was shaped like a pyramid. The top portion and the bottom portion was identical, the same shape. Top portion was just so. It had a seam here. And the bottom portion was here, identical.
So it's like a double pyramid.
Yes, four-sided pyramid, both top and bottom. It was blue. It had lights here on the edge, red lights, and it had some type of a skin to it where it was fish scales. So it has these scales
Okay.
all over the ship, and it looks just like fish scales.
All right. And you said this came down to you while you were on the ship, like out at sea, or? And
Wow.
and Marion there, he's one that has interacted with 6 different species. He's the one that kept correcting me from reptilian to serpent.
Oh,
He's the one that was talking about the fish species. He said the fish species are much more helpful.
Mm.
I guess that would mean that they seem kinder or more more positive emotions.
yeah.
But that particular craft that he saw, he was with his daughter, and he said he saw a bright light in the distance, and it kept. I'm trying to check the camera, make sure I'm not ducking way off of it. But it kept getting brighter and brighter and bigger and bigger. And he was like, "Holy crap! Do you see this?" And it came up like very, very close to him. He does military contract work. I'm not going to say which part of the military, but
What kind of work? What does he do?
I don't know that I need to disclose that either. Computer type work.
Okay.
Okay.
That'll be the best way to do it. But he's also a liaison.
Mm.
If I can, I mean, he says it in the film. So, and I haven't done cuts on it, and he said it on camera and said I could put it on camera. So, But yeah, he said he's a liaison in communications with
Wow.
and that's why he's met 6 different species.
Gosh, that's going to be great. I can't wait to see that. Is there anything else you can tell me about encounters?
I sent one of Dave Baker.
Yeah. Do you want to play that?
Yeah, let's play the Dave Baker one.
Okay.
Since we're discussing this was more human,
Yeah.
do you think, in your mind, do you believe that was alien, or do you believe that was government? Time travel? Who knows? I mean,
Yeah. No.
we don't know what we're getting into.
Well, I've always felt like it was the government. And I also feel that the government is involved in the other things too, especially when we talked about the guy taking the tag out and disappearing.
Yeah. Now we because I don't know all of your story yet, but so we may get into it. Do you think the tag was able to be used by both the government and an alien species?
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised.
Now, that particular clip, we're talking about the tag that was in his foot. That's the organic tag I told you about, the size of a pearl. And we were discussing that portal.
Wow.
And about the person stepping through. Do you believe it was the government or, an alien stepping through, whatever? And he said he believed it was the government. And then that brought me back to the tag about, okay, is the tag something that just aliens can follow you with, or is the tag something that both the government and aliens can track you? And that's when he said it wasn't surprising that it does both. That
because also he went back to that doctor's office to find out what the lab report was 3 months later. And not only was the doctor gone, the whole building was empty.
Done.
The entire building was just like a shell.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. And you kind of want to look into that and try to find out if there's a podiatrist that went out of business. And I know where it's at, and that's some of the vetting I'm gonna do. I'm not trying, and again, I think the vetting is just so that I'm not trying to disprove him. I'm trying to affirm what he's saying, but I'm also trying to determine, is the podiatrist a podiatrist, or was he just a government official?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't, this story can go any way it wants to go. And that, so we're, it's hard to look at some, it's like, it's kind of like in Incredulous when the nuclear scientist was talking, and he said that I'd asked him about aliens teaching us nuclear engineering, okay, how the atom works, how substructures beyond the atom, such as when you get into the strings and quarks and all that. Why wouldn't aliens have tried to teach us that in the beginning? And his comment was, well, you don't start trying to teach complicated algebraic equations to somebody that's in first grade that's learning addition and subtraction. You got to start and work your way up. And even in religion, it's that same concept is there, in that, okay, if you have a omnipotent, omnipresent God that knows everything, sees everything for all time, and we're a fledgling species of humans, you would say, why doesn't God show everything he can do at the very beginning? Well, we may not have been ready to accept a God like that we have to be taught, okay, somebody's above us and they make the sun go around us, because we can't comprehend that we go around the sun yet. And then it works its way up as we become more intelligent and able to work on our own history and our own past experiences. science, actual science in, we have ufology, but actual science into aliens, into UFOs, into other planetary beings, I guess is the best way to say it. We have no groundwork. At least the public has no groundwork. So yeah, these tangents can go anywhere. Interdimensional, we may have aliens that don't come from other star systems. They're here, but in different wavelengths, or in this quantum field that we have. It can be anything. So you're really starting from scratch. You're starting with Isaac Newton getting hit by the apple on the head.
Yeah.
All we're doing is just observing a couple of things when we have no concept of any of it. In fact, up until 2 years ago, we were told none of it was true.
That's a fact. That's a fact. And now, like you're saying, we could be slightly out of phase with something and literally occupying the same space, and we would never know it.
I mean, it would be so easy to start, if you were just trying to go on a theory of interdimensional, we could easily start going into, okay, well, some people seen ghosts, right? Maybe our soul, our soul is obviously something different than physicality. It's more than just chemicals that hit right in the brain. We know it's more than that. The soul is something special that we haven't been able to explain with science. We don't even know what creatures have souls. I mean, I think they've said there's only like 5 species of animals that have dreams. It's minute. So when you get into the spirituality, however you say it, of things, aliens, ghosts, spirits, all of that could be in the same dimension type thing. And one of my interviews, I told you, he said that he's not religious any longer. He was when he was younger. He says, but what I can tell you is that we don't die. And
why did he say that? Why did he say he can tell you that?
Because that's what he has gathered from the contacts that he's made, and the contacts being alien species. Now, my follow-up question to that was, okay, we don't die, but do we remember? If that, spiritually speaking, religiously speaking, okay, so my mother passed away 1.5 years ago. Did she go straight to heaven in the biblical sense, or is she waiting until Jesus comes? Is she aware? Even if she did go to heaven, is she aware of what I'm doing here on earth right now? Because she's not God. God can, but can my mother? Or is my mother just up there? Is she worried about me?
Yeah.
Those are the things that flow in my mind. So I asked him, I said, okay, so we don't die. Or as far as our bodies die, but our spirits don't die. When my body dies, will I know what's going on with my body? Will I know what's going on with family, friends, loved ones? Will I even remember it? Will I just all of a sudden be in a different phase where, yeah, my spirit may still be living, but I just have no recollection of being a human ever? And he said that he couldn't tell me. But that's a scary thought.
It is.
That's the whole existential process. It's almost scarier knowing that if you did live, quote, forever, spiritually, but each phase you had no recollection of anything prior, that's something that's not very comforting.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Did I go on the wrong tangent with that?
No,
not at all. I'm glad.
I was just going to say,
brought it up.
actually, the UFO subject, like I said before, it brought me to so many other things: the Men in Black, the secret government, breakaway societies, spirituality, dimensional shifts, dimensional jumps. The fact that there are multiple dimensions. Is there a 4th dimension, 5th? Are there millions?
I think
Is
there's
it infinite?
11 dimensions is what they've counted so far.
Gosh.
Once you get into like string theory and that type of stuff. So yeah.
And the great thing is about the UFO thing, there's so much to unpack here that we're just going to be going on and on and on for the rest of our lives. almost, you know.
Yeah.
So
Exactly
you need to
right.
keep coming back on our show, Bill, for the rest of
Yes,
our
sir.
lives, and keep us updated. And every time something new comes, and however we can be involved, I volunteer.
Sure.
We would
I
love
totally
to.
volunteer.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah,
And this should be a good trip that I'm going on. So the next few weeks in October, I'll be going from North Carolina all the way over to Montana, down to Arizona, and
Wow.
back through Texas and back to North Carolina. I'm going to do a lot of night sky surveys on my stops, and I've got dark skies out that way. I was the last trip I was near Skinwalker Ranch, but I didn't catch anything there.
ooh,
I would have loved to have, but I didn't. Catch
legendary.
anything.
Yeah.
Well,
But
you
like I
should
said,
keep us.
I did catch
like-
the two. I catch several things not far from Roswell, but there's a
Wow.
military base near Roswell.
Oh, that's right.
Oh man, I want to follow this whole thing. I want to follow your whole journey. I want frequent updates. We'll give out
I will
updates.
post the crap out of it on Facebook.
Oh, Facebook. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So yeah, I'd love to talk with y'all when we get done with this, and maybe we can bring some more insight into things. And again, if any of the viewers, any of the listeners have experienced anything, no, I'm not Joe Rogan, I'm not Jeremy Corbell, I'm not Greer, but I'll be happy to talk to you, and let's see if we can make some sense out of everything and bring some coherence to it.
And where do they get a hold of you, or where do you want them to?
They can if you're on Facebook, my name is Bill Howard on Facebook. Maybe
Okay,
y'all might be able
that
to
your
put a link
page.
in it.
Sure,
Sounds
good.
And then but you can Whirly Gig Pictures, WHIRLIGIGPICTURES at gmail.com.
Okay.
That's an easy way to catch me on email, but you can message me through Facebook as well.
And that
Excellent.
goes for the people also that have maybe had an experience and they think they might want to tell their story.
Even if you see something, if you see like UFOs that are consistent at night, I travel throughout the US. More than likely, I'll be in your area at some point in time. Hey, we'll go out there together and we'll film the skies. We'll find it.
That's awesome.
That's
Bill,
great.
I had a great time tonight.
So did
It's
I.
just an
This was
amazing
a
time.
pleasure.
And we're going to do this again very soon. And
We're almost going on 2 hours, aren't we?
And
Oh,
you're
yeah,
a world
you're the
of
winner.
knowledge, Bill.
This is our longest
Really
show.
are.
You win.
Yeah.
But I could go on for 2 more hours, but
I
let's
could
do that
too.
next time.
Yeah, we
And,
need to save this for some future content.
Sure. Oh, we'll have plenty of content.
Again,
Well,
it's been
guys, I
a real
appreciate
pleasure.
it. And
Great. Thanks so
and
much.
let me
Bill.
know when it drops, and I'll make
Yeah,
sure
we
it gets
will.
spread out everywhere too.
Great.
And we'll get some more good stories coming up. And we
Thanks
can
a
even
lot.
talk non-UFO stuff sometime.
Oh
too.
yeah.
Thank you, Bill.
All
All right. Thanks.